Get ready for an uplifting experience with Coached Soul. Join us as we bring you the dynamic duo of Steve Hudgens, a licensed professional counselor, and Kenya Evelyn, a transformational leadership coach. Together, they'll guide you through engaging episodes filled with valuable insights and actionable tips on mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Coached Soul is your go-to podcast for empowering discussions that will help you thrive. So let's get started and welcome our hosts, Steve and Kenya.
All right, welcome back. And boy, did we stir up the hornet's nest the last 2 weeks, Kenya. You know, I kind of...
So I've heard.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been interesting
Yes.
comments. One that we're snakes, oil salespeople because we're setting what we're saying. And I'm like, it's funny because I asked them to listen before commenting. And it's amazing how many people want to jump in
And have no clue of what
and
we're
have
talking
no clue
about.
what we're talking about, because all we talked
Fascinating.
about was toxic masculinity and femininity. And that's the other part. So I'm part of this other Facebook group, and that's been interesting too. And so
You know,
I think,
I'm fully in awe, but not really, because if we had only positive feedback, as in, oh my gosh, tell me more about this, what's going on, then I think I would relax back and say, okay, this is it. Like, we stroke a chord. Let's there's an opening, there's a break, and maybe the drive or the passion might diminish. I don't know how you feel about that, but in my life, what I have noticed is when things get a little squeezy and I know that I'm meant to speak about something, that I'm meant to shine my light, those are actually confirmation that I'm in the right track.
you know
You know?
what's interesting, when you put it in that perspective, just the key words that I put out there, gender.
Yes.
And I didn't talk about, the transgender. We didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about
Anything. It was just
we spoke
roles.
about masculinity and
Yes.
femininity, and about how we need to embrace both sides. And, even in the Facebook group that I was in, okay, the question was, is it okay for a woman to propose to a man for marriage?
And I remember that post.
And so I put on there that if
Or
you
how do
go
you feel
back,
about it?
well, right, I just said Ezekiel 18 talks about how the garment of God that spread over us, that accepts us as and you were mine. And it's the same verbiage that's used in Ruth chapter 3, where Ruth goes to Boaz and lays at his feet and says, here, cover me up, right?
Yes.
Let me be part of your family. So that was sort of like a proposal to him. And so I want to carry this gender idea, the art of listening.
There we go. So there's two actually different topics, and we can
Correct.
go art of listening in regarding to feminine and masculinity, and yet just a sentence, the art of listening, it reflects back in every area of our lives, period. Because if I am here in this podcast, waiting for my turn to speak, and I'm not listening to what you're saying, the listeners will feel that it fall flat. In my relationship with myself, if I'm not listening in my quiet time to the thoughts that are truth versus the thoughts of fear, if I'm not distinguishing and I'm not sitting in my stillness, I'm literally just running patterns, ancestral patterns, cultural patterns. I'm NPC in this life. I'm just a zombie reacting, not listening. Now, shall we go a little further in man and wife relationship? If I am not listening to her at all, or if I'm not listening to him at all, there is no relationship. I'm in at war. So I found it fascinating, this comment in our podcast, which is nothing about us. Can I just say this? It's the reflection of what this person is at.
Mm.
Because the word says, those that have ear to hear, listen. The way I hear that passage is those that are in the same frequency, they get it. Those that are not in the same frequency, it will run past you until you pick up the frequency and are magnetized to actually go deeper for you, not because somebody wants it to, not because she forces you to take a course or go to therapy, but because you see the value of connection. And there is no connection, intimacy without listening.
And when we say, well, you're just not listening, we're guilt and shaming in that statement. Because the question becomes, are we clear in how we are communicating? And then are we getting the proper feedback to say, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, or no, let me try to explain it a different way. Are we
Absolutely.
allowing that other person to have clarity in their speech? And it goes back to my old expression of what I use in therapy. I use this with couples all the time. And I'll use it again because I think it's worthwhile. I tell a couple, and this is all I share. You're running towards home. And as you're running towards home, there are two men standing at home. You see them as you're running, and they're standing there with two masks on. What are you going to do? And I pause, and the immediate response would be, well, I want to get a gun, or I'll call the police. What are they doing at my house? And I clarify and I say, well, wait a minute. I didn't say house. I said home. Yes, you did. And the husband or the wife will correct the other, say, no, he actually said home. But we're still in danger because two men are standing there. And I said, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm talking about a baseball game with the umpire and the catcher standing there in mask, and you're running towards home. If we don't provide clarity,
Facts. Yes.
or ask more questions, then how do we get to the art of listening to one another without assuming?
So the tools that I hear you saying is quality questions.
Correct.
Another tool that you can practice all by yourself, and I want to offer that as an invitation to every listener, me included, is to just by choice right now, as you're listening, to make a decision to be engaged in the art of listening. Just the intention itself, you know what? I never heard about putting that way, Kenya, Steve. And I'm sold. Yes, I would like to be the kind of person that is magnetized by listening, the accuracy and the acuity and the nuances of an open heart, that have the desire to listen and to be present, period. The opposite of that, may I? Let me paint the opposite picture. The opposite of that is to always be ready to go to war because you listen to defend yourself. You're not listening to the words at all or the meaning behind the words. The plea usually is a plea for help, a plea for connection. Or in our case, the podcast, which is the reason that we decided to go deeper in this, we are here just two people that love God, love people, truly love people, wanting to help. We have not started to monetize this podcast. Truly, this is a gift from our hearts to the listener. And we want to raise quality conversations so they can bring home whatever home is.
It's even going into a deep context. And what I'm picking up on is when you talk about, are we ready to give a self-defense? There's been a shift in paradigm of thought here. Because if you go back into the era of, let's say, the 1920s or the 1930s and the Depression era, right? We were a people who were willing to help other people who were hurting. we were able to have difference of opinion and still value to where say, well, Kenya, I disagree with your opinion. I can't be your friend anymore.
Mm.
We grew into a nation that took differences of opinion and formulated something different and new.
Mm-hmm.
But because we've gone into a disloyalty, because there's so many different brands out there, I mean, how many five and dime stores have there been since Benjamin Franklin was back in the day? You know, or the, you know, that's the five and dime store. That's where you got the little
Mm.
green stamps. And I don't talk about food stamps. It's the little green things that you collect, and
Yes.
get special, you know, this is back in the 50s and the 60s. But what I've noticed is how quick we are into response.
Mm.
Just like a fast food restaurant, we're quick to give out our food
Mm-hmm.
than to preserve it and thaw it. And you know, Solomon made great stride in Proverbs. The wise man knows when to be quiet.
Mm.
The foolish man will rant.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that art of listening, do we take the time to listen to what the other person is saying, going back into this godly thing that this post that was in Facebook?
Mm.
Is it proper for a woman to ask for a man's hand in marriage? Was the question.
Mm.
And I simply
So,
said, take
yes.
Ezekiel and take Ruth, which I've already expressed in this podcast. Can we think outside the box? Is where does it say in the rule book that Kenya is not supposed to ask a man out for marriage? Where in the rule book does it say that a man must ask a woman for marriage?
Mm.
Where does that come from? I kind of
Mm.
want to dive into that a little bit in the art of listening, because where do our ideas stem from, Kenya?
So here's the thing. I'm going to answer this question the way I know how to be the most authentic, which is bringing back the mirror in me in my own life. I am, you are, we are a reflection of our choices, our indoctrination, our codes. I don't like that word, but it really is indoctrination. Indoctrination by culture, religion, politics. In my case, I grew up in Brazil, and there's no A in HEW hockey sticks that I will propose to a man. Based on my culture, no.
Right.
My worthiness tells me that the man needs to earn that spot close to me. Not just close to me in my realm of my home and propose, but to earn my energy. And now, because I work with energy, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And I would brought it up, not just men.
Right.
The Kenya that you're speaking in front of today, I will not give myself out to everyone so thin, spreading myself so thin the way I used to in my youth, because my giving actually didn't come from giving. It came from, please love me.
Mm-hmm.
Please love me. Let me bend over and do everything for you so you can tell me that I'm good enough. And maybe, just maybe, I'll feel like I am. So in my 40s, I don't need to tell anybody I'm worthy. Hey, husband, treat me right. I'm worthy. Hey, Steve, I'm worthy. You don't say it, you show it. I show
Right.
it
Right.
through my being and through my boundaries. I don't dissect at all. I just retrace myself. Okay, my energy is not going to be there. It gets bigger. Anything gets bigger when you put energy on it. I just retrieve my energy. So I don't have a opinion. Is whatever is right for this woman. If this woman feels like I'm in my power and I am proposing to this beautiful man, do it. That's your alignment. Now, for me to judge, it's not up to me. So I'm very much into old fashioned because it's my culture and my choice, where the man would open the door of the car and do all the things because it just feels right to me. It does something to the chemistry of my body. But maybe women another woman from a different culture feels completely different, and it works for them.
You
So
know,
I am no one to tell you this is good, this is bad. There's no duality for your alignment. I'll say it again, there's no duality for your alignment. And if you're listening to the listening, not just to the words, but to the energetics, you will know the alignment behind the action or not. You will feel
no,
it.
you're spot on. I mean, let's twist this up a little bit. You come from a culture of where dating is different from the United States. You have the chaperones, you have a variety of different things that go into play of dating and courtship in your culture.
Mhm.
But let's go into modern day, not saying that Brazil's not modern, but let's go into the modern thought, meaning that here we are, that typically in the United States, men do ask the women.
Mhm.
But there's been a paradigm shift to where females want to they want to play manly sports. They want to be doted on and stuff like that. Okay, great. You
Power
want
to
to
them,
do some
sure.
right. If that's what you want to do, I'm all for it.
Mhm.
But don't contradict to where, oh, the man has to propose, and yet you want the responsibilities of whatever for you.
Mhm.
What makes us different? So it's looking at, again, going back to our two
Well, may
podcasts.
I, is misalignment.
Yeah,
Because
that's where,
it's
yes,
misalignment. Because
yes,
if you were saying, I just want the perks and the power of the masculine energy, but I don't want the responsibilities of the masculine energy, then you're completely misaligned. That is actually manipulation. It's going towards control, which is the reverse of true intimacy and freedom, freedom of expression. So
yes,
again,
yes.
freedom of expression is not something you earn. God has given to all of us. It's a shadow to feel like you're stuck. If you feel like you're stuck, let me talk to you for a second. It's a shadow. Kenya, what's a shadow? Um, it's not really there.
Mm,
It's there, but it's not really there. Because can you stop energy? Come on, Steve, can you stop energy?
you can't.
Impossible. So when you think about, I feel stuck, I feel stop, it's almost like a self-made constriction.
Hmm.
Energy is always moving. The question is, are you in alignment to where the energy is moving, or you don't want to accept where the energy is moving and you try to bring it over here? That is where the stuckness lives.
And I appreciate how you were able to clarify what I was trying to say, because it takes both of us to have this unique kind of podcast to bring a male and female perspective. And you help bring flowers to my speech sometimes in trying to clarify, so you make it smell better.
Make it smell
So
good.
it does. I appreciate it.
Get some essential
And
oil
and
going.
and that's the thing. We're in this 21st century, and the last two podcasts, how do we address the toxicity of masculine and feminine? And I know we talked a little bit about that last week. But where I want to kind of go with this is the art of listening is comes the idea of what I'm doing just now.
Yeah.
I'm pausing as I speak to draw emphasis for us to be able to process, because some of us are slow processors and some of us are fast processors.
And we're always evolving.
And we're always evolving.
Mhm.
The thing is how do we start working on contextual listening versus taking things at face value?
Mm. So my answer to that is curiosity. In the state of curiosity, you disarm being right or wrong. I have felt in my body the times where I was grumpy, upset, angry, fill the blank. I had
Mm,
an agenda and my agenda wasn't met. So I got disappointed. So in the moment that I retrieve, and that only comes, my beautiful listeners, my friends, that only comes with the desire to have a connection outcome, not winning. Nobody wins in relationship unless everyone wins.
Right.
So no, I don't want to be right. And it's actually a joke around my house with my kids. Hey, do you want to be right or you want to be happy? Because there's no both here. Either we win as a family or we just miscommunicate everything and we spoil the event, the outing, the dinner, whatever it is. So number one is curiosity. How am I behaving? Am I running the program here, a ancestral program, a, you know, my unhealed trauma coming up to visit, and I really am committed to being right because I'm smarter and bigger and blah blah blah, whatever. Or am I dropping my wish and the things I think I know to be open to learn something from her, learn something from him? I was recently listening to a podcast about sexuality inside the marriage, and it was very eye-opening to me, this open vocabulary that they were using, and it was amazing. I highly recommend. And it was talking about how women in general are dissatisfied,
Mhm.
and most men are not. But the way women relate to sexuality is very different than the way men relate to sexuality.
Correct. Yep.
And the idea here is not the frequency of the encounters, but the quality. So if you say 3 times a week is the average, somebody, and that is kind of meh, kind of in the middle, but a couple that is having once a month, really great connection once a month, it's way more fulfillment than the frequency.
But that goes back into the art of listening.
Exactly.
Are
So
men being able to listen to what their women are saying?
and vice versa.
And the same thing, are women listening to the men? And so it's not about having our agenda being forcefully, because that's our Western culture of thought, is to force opinion so that we can
Mhm.
dominate and squash. But if that happens, how do we grow? We don't.
I'm speaking prophetic here right now.
Sure.
This is over. This is
Correct.
100% over. The era where we're reading all the books and listening to everything and acquiring all the knowledge and not embody and applying to our lives and actually making us a different person and transforming a DNA to the next generation is over. Those that does not allow yourself to heal truly would not be able to survive where we're going, the speed of light. And I don't know what I'm talking about. I just feel like that is the message. And the best way that I know how to let go of the ideas and the knowing and the certainty is to surrender that God is guiding us. To surrender that stillness and the listening, the art of listening to Him, and disconnect from the how. I'll say that again. Every client that I have, every mentorship relationship that I have, every friend that I have the same kind of dance, which is I'm pouring my heart open, they're listening, I'm listening, and then they go, but how do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
But how am I going to? But how? And I am telling you, dear listeners, we get to let go of the how. The how shows up when you are in alignment. It's almost like I want to try the cake before it's baked.
So how do we get the ingredients, right? So there again, what did I say? The word how. How do we get the ingredients, right?
Exactly.
So it becomes in the curiosity. What if American cake? Oh, okay, prime example.
You can just say, tell me more about the ingredients. It
Right.
truly is in our language. Because every
Right.
time you say how, we are conditioning ourselves that we don't know. I'll say that again. I want you to get it. Every time I say, but how? I am making myself into this little being that has no clue of anything. And that is not a masterpiece of God. So stop diminishing your knowing, your heart, your magnetic heart. Let's start making ourselves who we are. We're masterpieces. If we are listening, comma, if we're willing to be listeners, we will receive information.
So one of the
We're
examples
always
that,
receiving information.
well, one of the examples I'm going to close out with, because we're out, and so we're going to have to do this again, listeners. We're sorry.
Let's do
We
it.
just keep giving you a cliffhanger. The thing about is what I'm hearing. It's like I grew up in Texas, where cornbread was real cornbread in an iron cast skillet. Okay, but you come to Oklahoma, and they put sugar in their cornbread.
What?
And I'm like, that's not cornbread, that's cake. Right? So I want to leave it there, because I want to pick up on the next podcast of how do we accept the differences of what's there without trying to force the opinion of which cornbread is right. So until next time, have a blessed week and take care.
Beautiful.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Coached Soul, where we aim to empower and uplift you on your journey towards personal growth and well-being. Remember, as you navigate through life, you don't have to do it alone. We encourage you to reach out to professionals, seek support from loved ones, and take the time to prioritize your own well-being. Stay tuned for future episodes filled with even more valuable insights and actionable tips. Remember, you have the power to thrive. And with Coached Soul by your side, anything is possible. Until next time, take care, stay empowered, and keep shining your brightest light. For more information, contact Kenya at kenyacoachedsoul.com.